Good morning and welcome. My name is Oreen Chowdhury and I am the chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. I'm going to call to order our regular meeting for Tuesday, September 17th. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all committee members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of their rate of speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. I'll now have the clerk call the roll.
Council President Payne.
Present.
Councilmember Wansley.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Ellison is absent. Osman.
Present.
Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Vice President Chuktai.
Present.
Koski.
Present.
Palmisano is absent. Vice Chair Rainville.
Present.
Chair Chowdhury.
Present.
We have 10 present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. I'll remind my colleagues that we're using speaker management today, so please make sure to sign in. I'm sure many will have comments today. We have one item on our agenda today, which is receiving a file presentation on the preliminary design plans for the Blue Line Light Rail extension. On July 9th, this body received a presentation on the comments related to the supplemental draft environmental impact and transmitted those comments to the Metropolitan Council. On September 12th, the Climate and Infrastructure Committee held a public hearing to receive comments from the community on the preliminary design plans. Today, we'll be hearing from staff regarding the preliminary design prior to voting on municipal consent at the September 26th, 2024 Climate and Infrastructure Committee meeting, which will then go to full council on Thursday, October 3rd. A few things that I'll note for committee members is we're probably going to go right up until lunch. It's obviously good if we're able to make it through before then, but there is a lot to present on today, and we want to make sure that every member of the body is able to hear this presentation and give their comments. I'll note to council members who make comments and want to have those comments reflected in part to the work that our staff is doing around the resolution for municipal consent, to just make a note of that, and then I will make a note to our clerk, Michael, today to take a note of that so he can connect with our city staff to work best with you to be inclusive of those comments. This presentation will have a couple places to pause for question. We'll go through process, we'll have a little bit of a pause, we'll go into the infrastructure items, and then we'll have a little bit of a pause for your questions, and then our staff will discuss anti-displacement, and there will be another pause. I will now invite our staff to begin their presentation. We have Jenny Hager from Public Works, and then I believe Meg McMahon from CPED will also be co-presenting.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Jennifer Hager. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning and Programming for Public Works, and I'll be making a joint presentation this morning with Meg McMahon, who is the Planning Director in Community Planning and Economic Development. I do want to acknowledge that we do have additional staff in the room. We have staff from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and we have project office staff as well as representatives from Hennepin County with us today. Today we will review the history of the project, what is included with the project in Minneapolis, and what the municipal consent process is, and provide a brief overview of the areas of focus for the city. As the chair mentioned, this is a long presentation, so we will be pausing for questions along the way and taking your questions as we go. In response to the need to evaluate a new route option that would not use the BNSF corridor, In 2022, a route modification report made the recommendation to pursue the West Broadway corridor alignment for the Blue Line Extension project. So we had Blue Line Extension 1.0, which was the previous iteration of this project, and now we're working on what we call internally as Blue Line 2.0. In 2023, the Corridor Management Committee for the project recommended the currently proposed route for this project that follows West Broadway, 21st Avenue North, Washington Avenue, and 10th Avenue North, which is the basis for the preliminary design plans now being considered for municipal consent. As it stands, this project is not perfect, but we do feel it is a worthy project, and we'll continue to work to make it the best that it can be to serve the people and businesses along the corridor. Should the project receive municipal consent and be authorized to proceed in project development, detailed engineering design, station area planning, and the final supplemental environmental impact statement will occur in 2025. If all goes as planned, it is anticipated that people will be riding the Blue Line extension in about 6 years. This project is an unprecedented investment in transit in Minneapolis, and in particular, North Minneapolis. It will complete the current light rail system that Metro Transit operates. This $1 billion plus investment, that's $1 billion plus just in Minneapolis, will bring fast, reliable transit service to North Loop and North Minneapolis and includes 5 planned transit stations. The city is requesting a 6th station be included with the project. This project and associated infrastructure investments will bring federal, state, and county resources to help the city achieve its mode shift, greenhouse gas reduction, and equity goals, and will offer convenient and safe ways for people to get where they need to go. Done correctly, this project will protect those who live and own businesses along the corridor and ensure they experience the benefits of the project without being displaced. We'll provide more options for people to get around, help the city to reach its climate and equity goals, reconnect North Minneapolis to the Mississippi River over I-94, bring increased prosperity to residents along the corridor, provide service to an area of low car ownership, and advance efforts around Vision Zero with needed safety improvements and updated street designs, including greening in the right-of-way.
It's the wrong presentation.
It's the wrong presentation. Our apologies. I was wondering why I had an audience up close over here. One moment.
No worries, take your time. While our staff takes some time transitioning to the right presentation, I'll note for the record that Councilmember Ellison has joined us, and I'll also remind committee members that we're using speaker management today for questions and comments. And then I also would like to make a correction. Our final full council meeting will not be on October 3rd. It is actually rescheduled for Wednesday, October 2nd, due to Rosh Hashanah. All right, Madam Chair, committee members, our apologies for that. The slides are very similar. You have a copy of the slides. And again, if there are questions, we're happy to go back to any of this. But we were talking about the benefits of the project. And we will move to the next slide here with a little bit more detail around those benefits. So the project is about more than just tracks, trains, and stations. There are many miles of improvements planned in association with the project.
Importantly, over 3 miles of high-injury streets will be reconstructed to be safer for all who use them, whether by walking, biking, taking transit, or driving. A new bridge over I-94 will provide a connection for all modes of travel and continue the proposed 21st Avenue North Transit Greenway closer to the Mississippi River. New sidewalks that meet existing design guidance and that fill sidewalk gaps are included. There will be over 2 miles of protected bikeways built with this project, and other safety elements like curb extensions and safety medians will help ensure safety for people walking in the area, regardless if they are transit users or not. The extension will serve our highest transportation equity priority areas, bringing reliable transportation to those most in need. Nearly a mile of new transit greenways will be implemented on both 21st Avenue North and 10th Avenue North in North Loop. These transit greenways will be dedicated for those traveling without a vehicle, providing safe and efficient modes of travel. Light rail is the backbone of our regional transit system. It moves the most people and connects riders to other transit services like local and rapid bus to provide quick and efficient mobility throughout the region. The Blue Line extension is the critical missing northern extension of the light rail network, connecting North Minneapolis and northwest suburbs to opportunities and services across the region. As planning for the Blue Line extension advances, a full corridor transit service study will occur to evaluate existing and planned local and rapid bus service and how those services can connect to the Blue Line extension. The project will attract thousands of riders in Minneapolis each day, providing valuable access to people who both live and work along the corridor. For the 6 stations in Minneapolis, projected ridership ranges from 200 to over 800 rides per day. And within a 10-minute walk of these stations, the population served ranges from about 1,000 to over 5,000, and the jobs within that same 10-minute walk range from about 1,000 to over 7,000. Municipal consent for light rail projects is defined in Minnesota Statutes Chapter 473 and is focused on track alignment, including whether the track is at grade, elevated, or below grade, proposed bridges, structures, and crossings, and some roadway features such as traffic lanes, bike, and pedestrian facilities. Municipal consent aligns with what we more commonly refer to with our projects as concept layout, or about 30% design. There's quite a bit more work that goes into refining these preliminary designs into something that is constructible. Municipal consent must adhere to the defined timeline per statute. Action by the C&I Committee on September 26th is the first action by the Minneapolis City Council, followed by full council on October 2nd, and signature by the mayor prior to the deadline of October 10th. Municipal consent fits into a broader process and timeline for project development. The project office is working on an environmental mitigation work plan and will publish the final supplemental environmental impact statement in mid-2025. The city will have the opportunity to formally comment on the final supplemental environmental impact statement, including the environmental mitigation actions. Staff has put together detailed design comments for the project after reviewing the municipal consent drawings. Staff will continue to participate in regular design-focused meetings with the project office, and the city will have the opportunity to formally submit design comments at both 60 and 90% design in 2025. Anti-displacement efforts are underway and being led by the project office and Hennepin County. Anti-displacement is of utmost importance, and Meg will be going into more detail on this in a bit. The City Council has 3 options to consider in response to the municipal consent process. The city can approve and provide municipal consent, or the city can disapprove and provide specific amendments to the project that would cause the city to withdraw its disapproval. If no action is taken, the lack of action is assumed to be an approval of municipal consent. If the city disapproves and does not provide municipal consent, the list of requested amendments will be considered by the Metropolitan Council, who will ultimately decide whether any of the amendments will be made to the project. And Madam Chair, I will pause here for any questions on process.
Committee members, do you have any questions on process? I will recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. Director Hager, could you just speak to a little bit what the difference is between 30% design, 60% design, and 90% design? That, we're at 30% right now, and our resolution will be commenting on that level of detail, and then what level of detail will we be commenting on next year at 60 and 90?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilmember Cashman. That's a great question. 30% design, as noted, it roughly aligns with what we call a concept layout. So there is some engineering that goes into that, but it's a two-dimensional preliminary concept for the design of the project. Moving between 30% and 60% design is where the engineers take that 30% design and they put far more detail and engineering into it and create basically a three-dimensional drawing of what needs to be constructed on the project. More work goes into designing any underground utilities that are needed, setting the grades on the project, putting together all of the design details for what will be built on the surface. 90% engineered drawings are very, very close to what will be actually bid out and constructed by a contractor in the field. So just more details that go into those final designs between 60 and 90%.
Thank you. Just one follow-up, if I may, Madam Chair. So 30% will be, the route will be decided. There won't be opportunity for modification of the route next year after this municipal consent?
Ms. Hager.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cashman, so municipal consent specifically is for preliminary designs and is focused on track alignment, including the location of the track and whether it's above ground, below ground, or at grade. It also includes the location of the stations and some of the roadway features. There could be some minor adjustments to the track alignment, including the grade, post-municipal consent. And if that happens, then the project office, in accordance with the statute, would come back to the city for that specific change only, not for the project as a whole, but for that specific change only, and we would reconsider municipal consent on that change.
Thank you.
Ms. Hager, I just had one question on my end. Could you share with us what are we required under state statute, and then what is required of us or the project office at present by the FTA or the federal government?
Madam Chair, committee members, the municipal consent statute is a state statute and is in addition to what the project office is required for their federal funding with the FTA or the Federal Transit Administration. So they are separate and distinct, but we are required to go through the municipal consent process here locally at the state level.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any other questions on process? Okay, seeing none, you may continue, Ms. Hager.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So we are going to now move into the portion of the presentation where we will focus on our areas that relate directly to municipal consent. In considering the preliminary design plans and municipal consent, we have identified 6 areas of focus. We've heard from many, many stakeholders through the engagement process and through last week's public hearing, and we've got 6 areas of focus related to municipal consent. These are by no means the only things that need to be focused on or the only concerns that remain. Some of the themes that we have heard from the stakeholders during our engagement in last week's public hearing include the fact that the community has many questions, and they feel that they've asked these questions, and if answers were provided, those answers were insufficient. We are working with the project office to put information together to bring out to the community, and we are asking the project office to do more when it comes to engagement in response to these comments. We are also requesting that the project fund a city staff person or a city representative through a consultant contract that would act as a liaison between stakeholders along the corridor and the project. We've also heard that the project is moving very quickly, and they are correct. The public is correct. When we think about the timeline associated with the realignment in Minneapolis versus the other cities where the alignment has not changed from Blue Line 1.0. We've also heard about the significance of the impacts on the community from the project, and not just the physical components of the project. We've also heard from the community that displacement is a top concern, as is safety. The project office has detailed design plans for the entire corridor posted online. These are the plans that the City Council is being asked to vote on for municipal consent. If you look at these detailed drawings and have any questions leading up to the municipal consent vote, please let me know. For today, I'm going to focus the presentation on our 6 areas of focus, which are the Lowry Avenue Station, the West Broadway Corridor, the Broadway and Washington Station, the North Loop, and last mile connections. Meg will be discussing anti-displacement. The Lowry Avenue Station would serve both Minneapolis and Robbinsdale residents and provide access to jobs and destinations near the station and along the corridor, including nearly 4,000 residents and 2,900 jobs within a 10-minute walk. The station location is near North Memorial Hospital, which is one of the largest employers along the project corridor. The station is also located near the Grand Rounds and Victory Park. It is important that the design of the station is done correctly and in full consideration of the Grand Rounds and the park and historic resources of this area. Thus far, 7 alternatives have been developed and evaluated. A tunnel was looked at and deemed impactful and costly by the project office, and I will specify that that is a tunnel for the LRT. A concept where the station would be elevated was opposed due to negative visual impacts, a lack of functionality, accessibility, and safety, and overall longer walking distances and travel times for those trying to access the station. This is a bird's eye view of the Lowry Station area, looking directly north with Broadway running diagonally and Lowry running east-west on the screen. North Memorial Hospital is in the top left side of the slide. This shows the recently reconstructed West Broadway bridges over Lowry Avenue and the Grand Rounds, Theodore Wirth Parkway and Victory Memorial Parkway, as well as the on and off ramps between West Broadway, Lowry, and the Parkway are also shown. The municipal consent drawings currently show a station that is at grade. This design integrates the station into the adjacent parkland and also requires the tracks to cross the Grand Rounds at grade. We know there are concerns regarding the impacts of an at-grade crossing of the Grand Rounds, and we are asking the project office to continue working with us, including Park Board staff, on design options for this station. As we move south along the corridor, this aerial shows the extent of the improvements associated with the project, including key destinations in the area. In response to community feedback and to minimize impacts to the West Broadway commercial corridor, light rail will be routed on 21st Avenue between James Avenue and Washington Avenue. North-south streets between West Broadway and 21st Avenue will be reconstructed to facilitate connections between the Transit Greenway and the West Broadway commercial corridor. These north-south streets will include improvements for people walking, biking, and driving. The project includes reconstruction of 21st Avenue, converting the existing roadway into a transit greenway with new sidewalks, a two-way bikeway, and space for greening. There will be no vehicle lanes on 21st Avenue, and access to properties will be maintained along the north-south streets. West Broadway is identified as a high-injury street, and between Washington Avenue and James Avenue is the has the highest concentration of injury crashes of any stretch of street in Minneapolis. The intersection of West Broadway and Lyndale Avenue is the fourth highest crash intersection in Minneapolis since 2013. It has the second most number of severe and fatal crashes of any intersection in Minneapolis since 2013. To support existing and future businesses, provide connections to the light rail, and make needed traffic safety improvements, West Broadway will be reconstructed as part of the project from a 4-lane undivided roadway to a street with a lane of traffic in each direction and center turn lanes. There will be curbside parking in some areas, improved sidewalks and space for greening, dedicated left turn lanes, curb extensions for shorter crossing distances, and pedestrian safety medians. More community engagement is needed to refine the street designs along this corridor to best meet the needs of the community and to identify public realm design elements. This will happen as part of the final design process and in coordination with stationary planning, where we will continue to engage with the community in developing a vision for the area. Moving to West Broadway, west of James Avenue, we've heard questions from stakeholders regarding whether the design works for our emergency response professionals, especially on West Broadway, west of James Avenue, where light rail will run along the center of the street, along with the proposed transit greenways along 21st Avenue North and 10th Avenue North. The project team is coordinating closely with the Minneapolis Fire Department, North Memorial Hospital, and other emergency service providers, and will continue to refine street designs to ensure that emergency services have access through the corridor and to properties along the corridor. Under state law, any new construction must be fire code compliant. The fire code is a state fire code, which means it applies to Metro Transit as well as us. Any designs will be required to be fire code compliant. What this means in plain language is that the design of this project will not prevent our emergency services professionals from responding to an emergency. There are several other streets in Minneapolis that have similar designs to what is planned and proposed for West Broadway. These include Washington Avenue through the U of M campus, 5th Street in downtown, and Minnehaha Avenue between 52nd Street and 54th Street in South Minneapolis. Coordination with emergency responders will continue through final design to ensure the city has communicated that a station at Broadway and Washington is necessary and beneficial. A station at this location would support access to the area east of I-94, which has a concentration of industry and job opportunities, as well as new housing and development. It would support improved access from North Minneapolis across the highway to this area, as well as to regional destinations such as the Mississippi River, the Great River Road, and the Above the Falls Regional Park. Only providing tracks without a station would further the infrastructure divide between North Minneapolis and the Mississippi River that exists today. Moving to the North Loop, the project is proposed to use Washington Avenue to 10th Avenue North to 7th Street, where it will interline with the existing light rail infrastructure at Target Field Station. Along 10th Avenue North, the street is proposed to be reconstructed and converted to a transit greenway, much like what is proposed along 21st Avenue North. Because the street grid in the North Loop is somewhat irregular, the project is proposing to add new street connections, including extending 9th Avenue between 5th and 4th Streets, extending 8th Avenue between 5th and 3rd Streets, and constructing a new signal at 8th Avenue and Washington Avenue, and a new loop connection between 3rd Street and 4th Street behind the North Loop parking garage. Besides the need to maintain circulation within the neighborhood, we've all impacts of locating a train next to residential properties along 10th Avenue. Noise will be evaluated and mitigated through the environmental review process. There's a large transmission line under 10th Avenue that will need to be relocated, and this will be addressed by the project. And there are concerns that the project will make future removal of the viaduct more difficult or even impossible. The project office has committed to making design decisions on design that do not preclude future opportunities related to the viaduct, and starting to establish the underlying street grid in the neighborhood is helpful for any long-term plans around removing the viaduct. Washington Avenue is another high-injury street that will be reconstructed with safety improvements, including updated sidewalks and bicycle facilities. The top rendering shows the Plymouth Avenue station along with the 12th Avenue North connection, which provides critical access for a number of properties in the North Loop, including the Twin Cities International School, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, and Avivo Village. We are continuing to work with the project office to better understand traffic circulation and patterns in the North Loop under the proposed design, which includes reconstructing 10th Avenue North as a transit greenway as shown in the bottom rendering. Access to properties must be maintained and the operational needs of the properties must be considered. This includes things like bus circulation, trash pickup, resident and/or customer access, and emergency services. A critical part of investing in light rail is getting people to the stations. Unlike in other cities where the project will invest in park and ride facilities, our approach in Minneapolis is to focus on safe and convenient connections for people accessing the stations by walking, biking, and taking transit. We are working to include logical improvements to our transportation system that help the project meet its ridership goals and integrate better into the communities it serves. Improvements will include filling sidewalk gaps and reconstructing sidewalks with improvements to the public realm, making connections to our all ages and abilities bicycle network, evaluating transit service, including both existing and potential connections, and planning for future connections to other mobility options like scooters, shared cars, and mobility hubs. And Madam Chair, we'll pause here to take questions on the infrastructure.
Committee members, are there any questions on any of the infrastructure pieces or pieces that were touched on in the presentation so far? I will recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. These newly added renderings are very helpful for visualization of the stations. I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the safety elements with having at-grade stations to prevent people from actually getting hit by the train or actually being, on the tracks. So some information that I learned was that Jordan neighborhood in North Minneapolis has a really high percentage of children, and so there's concern about kids being on the track and potentially getting hit. And I'm wondering if you can speak to what is proposed to mitigate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilmember Cashman. I'm gonna look back to the staff team behind me for a little assistance here. But I will start by saying that we are looking at having dedicated crossings of the corridor for pedestrians, looking at where those key crossings already are today or want to be. So where are the people, where are they trying to get to, like a park, for example, and have we planned for and accommodated a safe crossing at that location? At most of the intersections in Minneapolis, it's going to be a signalized crossing of the street with the light rail. So there will be signals in place, including accessible pedestrian signals, to help pedestrians cross safely. And where we have a crossing that needs to be or wants to be along the alignment where we don't have a signal, then we're planning for pedestrian crossings, much like what you see along the Green Line on University Avenue. They're designed to make sure that pedestrians are turning themselves to face a train that might be coming their way, improving those sight lines so that the train operators also see the pedestrians, and kind of having that dedicated crossing location so that it is predictable. I'm going to see if Kathleen Mayall would like to come up and add to that. Thank you.
Hello, all. Thank you, Chair Chowdhury and Councilmember Cashman, for the question. I'm Kathleen Mayall, Public Works, working on the project as well. With that is of utmost concern. Safety is of utmost concern. And as Director Hager mentioned, West Broadway right now is one of our high injury streets, and that's for all modes. It's not just people in cars. And so all the design decisions we're looking at our street design guide, which has safety as a core tenet of how we are designing our streets. The different elements that Chair Hager mentioned certainly will be built into the design. And there are other pieces, for example, there's this interplay between left turn lanes and the property impacts, say. And one of the reasons why left turn lanes are necessary is because you want to be signaling that turn. You don't want to have cars. I know you asked about people walking, but just an example that you don't want to have cars turning without a signal in the case that a car and the train might collide. So that, we're building design elements and safety elements into the project, really paying attention to the resources in the area. North Commons Park, you've got North High School right there. You've got the North Side Greenway that's being planned. We're looking strategically at what sort of connections can come and integrate those different resources into the community to ensure safe crossings. And certainly a goal of this project is to make West Broadway and all the streets that were being reconstructed with this safer than they are currently. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, I will recognize Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to start by thanking all the staff from the different departments here in the city. You've all been really great to work with. This just got thrown at me really quickly. I have 3 blocks. I just counted them up, 3 blocks through my ward, but yet those have been really impactful blocks. And you've done a great job with community outreach. I really appreciate all the time you spent with the condo owners and the business community there. What I just want to emphasize is 2 things. And one is the opportunity that I hope is not lost. Number one, with those viaducts. That is technology from the last century, and it's going to go away. They are not going to replace those viaducts. And so my vote is contingent on making sure that when those viaducts go down in 10 years, 15 years, that land in the North Loop is wasted land right now. The land underneath those viaducts is wasted. And you have a dynamic area that we need to put that land to use to get it back on the tax roll. So please know that that's very important. Also, just for the whole system, not only the Blue Line, but in retrospect, your whole system, you need to have controlled access on those platforms. There are so many problems with behavior on those platforms. I raised this, I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee in 1902, whenever the hell you did the blue and green lines. And Dan's laughing at me because he was around then too, but I was shamed because I thought there should be controlled access on the platforms, that there would be behavior problems. Well, here we are, 1 century later, and yes, there are problems. So please think about that. It's a reality, it's the truth. We have to have controlled access on this new wing and really retrofit your whole system. Thank you.
I will make a note to our clerk about the comments regarding the viaduct and the controlled access for us to connect Councilmember Rainville and staff ahead of the final resolution. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to say thank you so much to all the staff who took me on the tour yesterday morning. That was so helpful. I was out with county staff, city staff, also park board staff, and I think Met Council folks also were out there. And so I really appreciate the tour and the better, I'm a visual learner, so it was so good to like actually see what you were saying, where the train was coming from. I think it's so much confusion, and it's these maps. They are like crazy busy. It's hard to figure out what street is what. It makes it way more complicated than when you actually go out there and just look at the area. And you know, you can see in real time where the station is going to be over on Lowry, where the light rail is coming from down Broadway. So I am personally going to go out and make a video and put out for my constituents to see, because I think it'll be way more helpful than continuing to send these very complicated maps around. One of the things, though, I noticed when I was leaving, and I shared my concerns about noise with you all yesterday, because it is a really noisy area, lots of helicopters from the hospital, and I don't care how long you live there, you still hear them. You know, sometimes noise just kind of goes away, but it doesn't, and it's more often than you think that you hear helicopter noise, and then also the emergency vehicles. So when I was walking back, I noticed like it would be really noisy for those homes right at the start of Victory Memorial Parkway. There's just kind of like, as the parkway gets moved to the position where you all showed me, there's just like a group of houses right there. I think some of you may have parked over there too. And it just seems like that's going to be a concern that they bring up sooner than later about the noise, because their houses are kind of right at the station. Also, I really want us to think about the at-grade crossing a lot. Right? Like, it didn't seem so bad when I was out there yesterday, but it is the biggest concern for people in my ward. Like, what is this at-grade crossing gonna look like? How are we gonna get from one side of the parkway to the other side of the parkway? Is the grand rounds gonna be cut off? And so that's gonna remain a concern for me until we get that figured out, because that's what people are asking about. And then, of course, the safety. That's an extremely residential neighborhood right there. Lots of people live there, and the safety concerns keep coming up. And that's just not safety of people at the transit station, it's safety of the actual rail and, you know, crossing in that area. You know, people feel like it's really dangerous. And like I said, you all did a fantastic job of giving me that tour yesterday and asking me questions and answering my questions. I'm sure there'll be more, but just after that, just after processing that, there's still the high concerns of noise and what at grade really, you know, like what that's really going to do for the community, looking at like what other options are there. I don't ever want us to give up on looking at options before we make a final decision on that station. And yeah, just being mindful of the people who live in that neighborhood, and not that they don't want it, but, you know, change is hard for a lot of people. Like, it's just really hard, and that's a big change. That's a huge impact to a neighborhood. So I just want us to all be considerate that people live there, and, you know, when the noise comes, I can imagine 200-300 emails on Monday morning, every Monday morning for the noise. So, you know, just kind of mitigating some of the things on the front end. If we can fix it now, I'd rather us slow down a little bit, fix it now, and then, you know, we don't have so much to work through. We know that this will be a project where folks are happy once it's done, but we also want to work through as much as we can now on the front end, so it doesn't have a huge negative impact on the community that's already been underserved. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will also note for the clerk on some of the points that Councilmember Vita made around the concerns around at-grade, noise, safety, and other comments for some administrative follow-up. We have 3 more council members here with questions, so I will recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. Just
wanting to respond or acknowledge some of the comments made around, safety concerns on the transit line, which I know that's also just a citywide conversation. And I know a number of council members have attempted to respond to that with initiatives like, the transit safety ambassadors that we funded as pilots. But one thing that I did want to know, especially when we're talking about some of the, risks that might come with control access, is thinking of the shooting that happened in New York this past week, where as a result of a resident not paying their fare, people end up getting shot. And it was a shooting that was incited with the police responding to that fare evasion and then shooting another cop and then several other bystanders. And I think, of course, that is like the extreme, outcome of flooding, public transit with law enforcement, which is the approach that New York has taken, or Mayor Eric Adams. But I know Metro Transit has been cognizant of a variety of safety initiatives. I believe they have their own safety ambassador program that they're rolling out. So can staff speak to, any conversations that you have had with Metro Transit as they're thinking about how they would correlate programs like that to support safety concerns along the transit corridor of these light rail stations? And then also, I know there has been an ongoing conversation around fare-free initiatives and pilots, so that, again, poor people aren't being over police for making use of public transportation to get around the city and to get to their destinations. So just wanted to know if there's been any discussions around those initiatives. I know Metro Transit has a number of, assistance programs for those who might be facing financial struggles as they're trying to participate in our public transit system, but wanted to know if fare-free initiatives have also been part of those conversations.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley. City staff have been engaging in those conversations with Metro Transit, and I'm going to ask Nick Thompson from Metro Transit to come up and speak in more detail to your comments and questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome,
Chair,
Mr. Thompson.
Councilmember, these are great questions. For the record, Nick Thompson, Deputy General Manager, Capital Projects for Metro Transit, and also the Blue Line Extension Project Director. So safety is one of our top priorities with Metro Transit. We're hearing making a lot of progress on that. We have a lot of strategies. You've mentioned some of those with our ambassadors, which is transit safety improvement personnel that we're putting out on the platforms and in the trains. It's a new initiative that we have. I think we're seeing a lot of early success with that. We have a comprehensive safety strategy for our whole system that we're implementing. And as it regards to the Blue Line extension, obviously that will carry forward when the project opens to the system-wide. In terms of the design, we're also, what can we design differently to make it a safer design element platform for at the stations and for customers and pedestrians approaching the stations. So all of those, what we're learning from the other lines, are going into that design process. And we have a lot of time still to kind of incorporate comments from the cities and the community on other ways we can improve that design from a safety perspective. But just I wanted to emphasize that safety is our top priority because we know our customers need that safety. It'll bring more customers back to transit. And I think we are making a lot of progress, and we admittedly say we have a ways to go. But it is a partnership with the community too, and I think we've been gifted with some more tools from the legislature, more funding to implement safety strategies, and I think we're seeing some that work that are new. So hopefully that answers your questions, and it'll remain a priority of this project and Metro Transit going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I was just going to ask about the
Fare-free,
fare-free question
yes.
as well.
Yep, so just a background, legislature requested that Metro Transit pilot 2 fare-free routes and complete as a pilot study that must go through the end of this calendar year. And one of those routes was on Lowry Avenue that actually connects with the proposed Lowry station. So the findings from that study will be shared later this year. So there's no conclusions yet of what the impact was. I mean, I can definitely has increased ridership on the 2 routes. So I've seen that, but we're looking at comprehensively. What does that change from the experience of the customer? What is the ridership impact? What is the travel time impact on the routes? And any other things we want to communicate holistically what that impact was. We don't have authority after this December to do other free routes. But we did receive some comments in our environmental process about exploring that or changing our fare structure to maybe reduce the financial burden for users. And so I think those are elements that are being looked at, not just for Blue Line Extension, but kind of at the system level. Once we produce the fare-free pilot study results, I think we'll be providing it to the legislature, and I would anticipate they will weigh in on what they would like us to do next and what authority they maybe give us for options in the future.
Awesome. Chair Chowdhury, I will know if, we can invite staff to come back when those results are finalized to give a presentation on that. Also, if there's any particular state actions that we can be considering. I know this body is going to be finalizing our list of legislative amendments to give to our lobbyist team to go out and talk to lawmakers at, the state level in the next coming session. If there's anything that supports you all having expanded authority to, go after additional pilots, it would be good to know if there is specific language that we can include in our amendment list too. I would love to have that be noted as a staff memo if there's any legislative language that you all have as part of maybe even your own legislative agenda that we could also amplify in ours.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. I will note that for administrative follow-up, our staff can kind of help connect to the project office on that question in particular. I'll recognize Councilmember Rainville again.
Thank you, Chair. Just a request of the project office, if you could help our staff when they go out and do all this community outreach, understand why the pink line wasn't an option. It was one of the original options. That is not being considered on this. There's got to be a reason, but we should talk about what that reason is. There is a lot of land on that freeway right away that could be used. So if you could just explain that. And then also, if the project office could arm our staff with the knowledge on the improvements on Washington and really all the pedestrian safety in the North Loop. The big concern in the North Loop right now is that Washington Avenue in particular is not safe for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I know there's been a lot of talk about how things will be different down the road. That doesn't help right away, but it would help if we could explain in detail how helpful the county is going to be down the road and the project office with these pedestrian safety improvements. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Rainville, I'll just respond. I don't know if there was a question there, but definitely a lot of comments, and they align with what we've been hearing from the community in our engagement work. So we are working with the project office to review alternatives that the project office has already looked at in the North Loop and alternatives that we're hearing about from the community now through the engagement process that they maybe haven't looked at yet, so that we can fully evaluate those and bring information back out to the community to help them understand how we got to the alignment that is before us today in the preliminary design plans. And we will also continue to look at those traffic circulation patterns in the North Loop as a result of the project. That becomes part of the environmental mitigation work as well. Where do we need to look at and focus on some safety improvements as a result of changing traffic patterns in the North Loop with these design changes, including Washington Avenue?
Well, thank you, Jenny. I'm repeating what the citizens are telling me. This has happened so fast to go down 10th Avenue that there's just this big cloud of mystery around the decision making, and there's consensus on the effects that are currently happening to pedestrian safety, but what will happen in the future. So the more you inform, the better it's going to be for all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, next I will recognize Councilmember Ellison, but first let me note for the record that Councilmember Palmisano has joined us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to touch on a few things. One was just to follow up on a few questions about safety. One, I wanted to also speak on the additional stop and just affirm the city's position on that. And then maybe amend Councilmember Rainville's request for controlled access. And so I'll start with the controlled access because, no doubt people want to have safety at the platforms. But as Councilmember Wansley pointed out, kind of enforcement of that can come with some unintended consequences. And so I really would love to know, like, what problems do we think we really want to solve for when it comes to controlled access of the platforms, right? Because we don't want foot chases and people being injured over $2 fare, right? And how much do we spend in infrastructure to make that happen, or human capacity, human capital, versus how much are we recovering in terms of fare and everything like that? I just think some of those things would be helpful. New York's an easy example just because they've had so many changes lately, but we're hearing that they're spending like many multiples more on enforcement than they are recovering dodged fare, and then in addition having the safety issues there. So just would love to know what we're solving for when we think about controlled access. Don't necessarily want to say that it's not necessary, just want to know, like, what problem are we solving for? Next, I just wanted to affirm the additional stop. For my colleagues, you guys might already know this, but there aren't that many access points from across North Minneapolis to the river, right? You've got Lowry, you've got 26, you've got West Broadway, you've got Plymouth, and then a few to the north. I don't know all of those once we get north of Lowry, but there's a few, but there aren't that many. It's not that easy to access. And I remember just a few years ago when we had there was some improvements happening along West Broadway. There Plymouth was shut down for a while, Glenwood was shut down for a while, and all of a sudden folks over north could not access the other side of the 94 trench, right? And as much as the construction of 94 gets talked about when it comes to the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, and it should be talked about in that context, I think not enough gets talked about in terms of what 94 did to North Minneapolis, and in terms of severely limiting Northside residents' access to the kind of one of our greatest natural amenities, which is the river. And so I say that all just to say how important I think that the stop is on Washington, up near Washington and West Broadway, especially when you think about, start at Plymouth, right? Start at Plymouth and Washington and walk to Lyndale and West Broadway, right? It's not a fun walk. It's not scenic. It's not short. And so I think that it is especially important for us to continue to lean on that. And I think it's really important for the project team to sort of to engage with this demand and this request and add that stop. It's going to increase that access. I think it'll also sort of pair well with with the construction that needs to happen along 21st in terms of increasing people's ability to get from North Minneapolis across the highway and towards some of these natural amenities, not only jobs and other industry, but also just the river, because the river is kind of cool. I think so anyway. So I just wanted to speak on that and affirm staff's position there. And then the last thing I wanted to ask about, just in terms of this, was we've had a lot of conversations about safety, and I know that this continues to come up when I talk to community members as well. And I think the kinds of things that people are imagining is like, a ball goes rolling onto the tracks and the kid's running out there to grab it as the train comes by. But we already have miles of track that's at grade across the city, and so I'm just kind of looking for, like, what are we seeing on the track that already exists at grade? Because I think I want to be able to have better answers for community folks to say, like, hey, look, this nightmare scenario, and that is a nightmare scenario to be imagining. This nightmare scenario is it likely? Is it unlikely? Has it happened a lot? Has it barely happened? Has it not happened at all? I just would love to be able to have some real world example, and I think the best way to figure that out is to figure out, well, what's happened already.
Mr. Thompson?
Councilmember, great question. What we're building, particularly in the segment proposed within Minneapolis, is very similar in design to the existing Green Line in terms of pedestrian movements around it and traffic. And so, we definitely have had some crashes that, all our roadways have crashes on them with or without trains. And so we are taking our design, we're really digging into, like, the history of all crashes, be it with pedestrians or with cars, and say, what is the design there and what can we do differently to prevent that type of crash and safety. So I think, there's a really strong focus on the safety of pedestrians who are crossing the tracks and crossing the road. As you've heard the staff say, this is currently a high injury, and, I'm confident our design is going to really improve the safety of Broadway and Washington and 10th over what exists today because of what we're doing to make the crossings easier, shorter, protecting the areas where they need to cross the train tracks so that they're we know now what we need for pedestrians to understand when a train is coming and how we design that. I'm very confident in that, but we will still take lessons or comments. I think we've adopted some of our crossings just in the past several months based on that concern, and particularly asking for more pedestrian crossings so that we don't have pedestrians taking risks to cross maybe mid-block or something like that. And I think I'm confident the design has gotten a lot better just for that based on community feedback. So, but we continue to look at what's happening today to influence a better design here than what we have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Councilmember Ellison, did you want to note anything for follow-up with staff or for the resolution? Okay, just wanted to make sure. I put myself in queue. I just wanted to make a couple of comments from this section of the presentation. First off, I think it's a really great idea to have a city staff liaison or contracted liaison between the city of Minneapolis and the project office. I am also really supportive of increased engagement. I will echo the comments that were made by our staff that many residents that came to our public hearing said that they did not have enough engagement or enough time to understand this project. We know that other cities had much more time to absorb the same amount of information. And it's really important that we give our community members the time and the access to really engage with the project office, the city, and the county. And I hope beyond the municipal consent process, there's some transparency with us on what those steps will look like in engaging with community members, and not just surface level engagement, but real involvement and a way for them to see how their feedback can be incorporated. And I think the final thing that I'll say, and it's just more of a question, in understanding there was mention of working with the comments that were made at the park board. I was wondering, Ms. Hagar, if you could kind of share a little bit about what the park board has said in terms of the station on the Parkway, just so we get a little bit of understanding of what we're trying to align with or work with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adam Arvidsson with Minneapolis Park Board is actually here, and I'm going to ask him to come up and speak to that, if you don't mind.
Welcome.
Hello, Chair Chowdhury, council members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Adam Arvidsson, and I'm the Director of Strategic Planning for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. I've been the staff liaison from the Park Board side for the project since it was 1.0, so I go a ways back. I think what I'll say specifically is that the Park Board submitted a letter in response to the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. The Park Board does not have municipal consent, so we're not actively going through a process right now. But in a lot of ways, those comments on the SDEIS really sort of set the tone for how the Park Board expects to continue to work through designs with the project office, and then also how we will move through the 4F process, which is a federal rule that protects parkland that the project office will have to also work through. There was a main letter that was submitted which had kind of 4 main topic areas that we wanted to talk about, one of which was the Lowry Station, and there were a couple of others. And in addition to that, the board did make an active resolution which effectively opposed an at-grade crossing between the Parkway and the rail. The letter also, though, did not take that option necessarily off the table. So I think the Park Board did not have enough information as provided in the supplemental draft environmental impact statement to be comfortable supporting an at-grade crossing at this time. And so we have officially asked the project office to provide more detailed data on that option and a variety of other options, which are listed in that letter. And some of those options do include possibly a parkway tunnel under the rail, possibly a station and light rail tracks at the elevation of the West Broadway bridges, so not a flyover option, but still a grade-separated option with tracks above. So essentially where the park board stands right now is that we feel like there has not been enough impact assessment done on the current option, and we would like more information there and also the exploration of additional options. And we expect that that will happen sort of during and after the municipal consent process, and then also leading up to the 4F process, which will happen after the municipal consent process takes place. So the 4F stretches a bit longer into the project. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, thank you. That was very, very clarifying. Really appreciate it. I'll just note one thing for administrative follow-up. It would be great to get the SDIS comments that the park board made and potentially the letter that was sent. That would be pretty useful information. I'll welcome up Ms. Hagar. I don't know if you have any follow-ups regarding my question or that.
Madam Chair, I'm just making notes for follow-up as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. I will now recognize Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Ellison, I wanted to follow up on a couple of things. You're absolutely right about that Washington Broadway station, the access to the river, 100%, and that has to be day one. It has to be. But to your comment about what problem we're trying to solve, it's not fares. And Councilmember Wansley, you had mentioned this in your remarks. I'm not concerned about the fares. I think that the Metro Transit Safety Ambassador is doing a great job. They've really figured out how to monitor that. The problems, and I'm experiencing this, every weekend down in Minneapolis. So the platform there's liquor sales. There's a gentleman who walks around with a half gallon of tequila and sells shots of tequila on the platform. There's drug sales, drug use, dice games, shootings, whether it's in downtown on those platforms or on Lake Street or Franklin. It's that type of criminal behavior that I feel we can be smart about in planning these platforms so that we can eliminate that. It's not the fares. So rest assured. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. A few people came up during the public hearing and said that they were told that a fire truck wouldn't be able to get down West Broadway. I see the chief is here, so I think it'd be great to get some clarity on if a fire truck can get down West Broadway with the rail.
All right, good morning. Fire Chief Brian Tyner, through the chair to Councilmember Vital. I have had a chance to go over the plans and review them and look at the access. That was one of the things I was mainly concerned with this project. It was to make sure that we would have good emergency access to all areas of the project, and I can say that we can. There is going to be a designated travel lane of 16 feet, which is a normal car lane. But in addition to that, with the embedded tracks, that gives us another 16 feet, which gives us 32 feet. The fire code requires 20. So once we get beyond 20, it's everything else is a bonus. So emergency access will not be a problem.
Thank you so much, Chief, and thank you for being here. I think a lot of people need to hear that on the public record. It is truly a concern. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I am not seeing any other questions from members, so I will welcome back up. Actually, I will be welcoming Ms. McMahon to present.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury, council members. I'm Meg McMahon. I'm the planning director with CPED, and I'll be focusing on the anti-displacement work that has been done and is yet to be done as it pertains to this project. Experience has shown that investments in high-frequency and fixed rail transit increase development interest as well as property values that are in proximity to the project. Now, these don't necessarily create or induce development that wouldn't already occur, but development does tend to gravitate towards these types of investments. First and last mile connections, which is how people and the surrounding properties connect to and from the stations, are key to ensuring that areas of the city are not cut off from this investment and can fully benefit from it. This project is an opportunity to better stitch neighborhoods together if the appropriate connections are made across the LRT tracks, as well as the existing barriers such as major roadways and the viaduct. It's important to note that the project is still only at a 30% design, and much of this work is yet to be done. The city will kick off station area planning next year, which is an opportunity to address the concerns about connections and how to leverage this investment fully. While there are very real economic and community benefits that investments in transit bring to communities, past experience has shown that investments of this kind cause harm too. Displacement, both physical and cultural, is an inherent risk which disproportionately impacts low-income communities and communities of color. That's why it's critical that intentional and directed efforts are put towards anti-displacement strategies now that will mitigate harms that the project might cause. And we have the opportunity to invest in the right way to address historic and institutionalized racism that has perpetuated disinvestment in our communities. Opportunity as part of stationary planning and further design and refinement of the project really have the opportunity to reshape the built environment to allow these other good things to happen that can occur out of this project. The city has adopted policies to minimize displacement. Policies located within Minneapolis 2040, our unified housing policy, and our anti-displacement policy. And these include themes around investments in affordable housing, expanding home ownership, and the creation of living wage jobs. However, the city cannot do this alone. The Blue Line Extension Project is a county and Metropolitan Council-led project. The lead agency is responsible for implementing anti-displacement strategies related to the impacts of that project. The city's role is to support these efforts and elevate community-identified needs related to anti-displacement. We also need to acknowledge that this change is uncomfortable, and that within this conversation that we're having right now, we have opportunities to mitigate and reduce unintended harms and negative impacts, but also we have the opportunity to make way for opportunities and benefits for the future. There are direct impacts related to this project. The municipal consent design plans show impacts on 34 buildings, requiring 34 buildings to be acquired, and 27 relocations of tenants, both households and businesses as well as institutions, as identified in the supplemental draft impact statement, which was published in June 2024. It's important to remember, though, that because the design is still at 30%, these numbers reflect a snapshot in time. They very well may change as design is further refined. For example, the station at Washington and West Broadway would be an addition to the project and will likely have parcel impacts as well. And as the project proceeds, there may be owners of properties that want to be acquired due to indirect impacts to their property. And the project will take that into consideration as well. Faith Tabernacle would be an example of one of those properties. There will be construction impacts during the construction phase, things like site access, circulation, utility work during construction, all causing disruption to businesses' access and operations. And then noise and vibration impacts once operations commence. There are also indirect impacts to these properties. Economic impacts including increased property values, which can lead to increased housing costs. Increased development interest, which can lead to increased rents for small businesses. And potential cultural displacement and other gentrification impacts. Through the design process, properties will be identified that will need to be acquired. Properties may have minimal or temporary construction impacts, or they may require a total acquisition, which would require the removal of buildings. There is a process laid out by the federal rulemaking about when and how a property can be acquired, what types of relocation assistance impacted businesses or residents have a right to, and how excess property after the project is constructed can be reused. The project office can prioritize clear communication about what the process is in general terms so that businesses and property owners who may be impacted at this point can have an idea of what to expect. However, the federal process precludes formally starting an acquisition until the project completes the environmental review process and receives a record of decision, which is not anticipated to occur until mid-2025. The project office cannot enter into negotiations or otherwise make commitments to potential impacted property owners until this happens, as it can be seen as possibly prejudicing the environmental review process. However, it's important to note that as a separate entity and agency, Hennepin County, as its own entity outside of the project, can make acquisitions ahead of the project. However, these then these are not considered project costs because they were acquired outside of the project, and property owners may not be entitled to the same federal relocation benefits that they might be if it was their property being acquired as a result of the project. So there's different tracks that can occur in terms of how this occurs, and individual property owners may need to decide what option is best for them. So an example of this would be Faith Tabernacle. They came and spoke at the public hearing and expressed a desire to stay in the community, but expressed that there are significant concerns related to parking and access as a result of the project. They expressed an interest in wanting to be relocated within the community before construction begins, but the project cannot negotiate with them prior to this record of decision. The city and Hennepin County have formed an acquisition and relocation strategy team that can meet with impacted properties ahead of the record of decision and work through site-specific challenges, including assisting with relocation resources ahead of the project. We have been in communication with Faith Tabernacle. We'll be meeting with them in the next few days to talk through what their options are and put them in a position where they can make an informed decision about what's best for themselves. Anti-displacement has been a consideration for this project for the past several years. In 2022, the county, along with other project partners, community members, and cities along the line, formed an anti-displacement work group. In May of 2023, the work group adopted 17 recommendations for anti-displacement strategies related to this project. The county was the lead on the anti-displacement work group, and in the spring of 2024 successfully advocated for the legislature to create the Anti-Displacement Community Prosperity Program, which created a board comprised of the members of the work group and allocated them $10 million in funding to support anti-displacement strategies along the corridor. In order to leverage these funds from this allocation, a local funding match must be identified. The city is actively involved in identifying creative ways that our existing programs and initiatives can be tailored to address the needs raised by the project and to serve as potential matching fund sources. The county is the lead agency supporting the board as they work through the process of adopting bylaws and determining priorities for the use of the funding. The county has also formed an internal team focused on anti-displacement strategies above and beyond the work of the board. As part of their work, last month, the county issued the Coordinated Action Plan for public comment, which outlines their plan for addressing and implementing anti-displacement strategies along the corridor. The county is also anticipated to take action on a resolution related to their commitments around anti-displacement. City staff have participated in this work from the beginning as well, including membership on the anti-displacement work group, in addition to establishing a formal internal process and team focused on anti-displacement strategies along the corridor, which I will talk about more in a few minutes. The city supported and advocated for legislative support for anti-displacement strategies, and the city has members on the ACPP board. The project itself also has a focus on anti-displacement. The environmental impact process identifies potential impacts of the project, including economic and displacement impacts. As part of completing and adopting the final supplemental environmental impact statement, the project will need to commit to mitigation strategies for these project impacts. The project will also follow federal and state regulations and guidelines for acquisition and relocation assistance for impacted properties. There are a number of programs, policies, and initiatives within the city that are in place today, which align with anti-displacement strategies that have been identified through the work that has been done to date. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the existing programs that we have in place, how those have been implemented along the corridor, and how they might be tailored in the future to further this work. So the city has policies that support renters. This includes right to counsel, eviction prevention policies, tenant screening reform, relocation assistance, advance notice of sale, and our Stable Homes, Stable Schools programs. We also have pathways to home ownership. The Minneapolis Homes program provides down payment assistance and rehabilitation loans for homeowners, and collaboration with land bank and land trust programs, as well as land disposition strategies that produce and promote home ownership. The city has affordable housing development and preservation policies and programs. We have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the Low-Income Housing Tax Credits, NOAA Preservation Program, 4D incentives, inclusionary zoning policies, and the Minneapolis Homes support for developers. On the small business side, the city has several programs that support small business growth and expansion. We have business financing that includes 2% loans, alternative financing opportunities that conform to Islamic law, site acquisition and pre-development support through the Ownership and Opportunity Fund, our Brownfields Grant Program, and the Met Council pre-development pass-through grants. We offer support for renovations and building improvements through our facade grants and our Great Streets program, as well as capacity building for emerging entrepreneurs and developers through our Business Technical Assistance Program, our Developer Technical Assistance Program, and our Cooperative Technical Assistance Program. We also have other citywide anti-displacement efforts embedded within our land disposition policies and how we dispose of and reuse city property. A robust workforce development program. We have cultural districts that have been identified with dollars to help support their stabilization, as well as public art programs. The city has also invested along the West Broadway corridor for many years. These investments support anti-displacement strategies and are part of citywide programs which will continue to be available along the corridor. These items don't represent every project on West Broadway or really in proximity to the corridor. There are many more, but these are some projects that highlight how we use the programs I just went over to help get projects done. So these include investments in affordable housing along the West Broadway corridor with the Beam project, West Broadway Crescent, and Broadway Flats, as well as Satori Apartments. Support for these projects included direct funding, the use of tax increment financing, Met Council pass-through grants, and the contribution of city-owned land to make the projects feasible. On the business and economic development side of things, the city uses land sales, direct funding, and Metropolitan Council pass-through grants to support projects like those listed on this slide, including the Capri Theater, Juxta Arts, Neon, the 927 building, Broadway Halal, and others. The city has also has directly supported and invested in workforce development along the corridor, including financial commitment to the Career Force Center at 800 West Broadway. Initiatives, so the city is committed to continuing this work, as well as examining where there may exist barriers for participation in our existing programs and policies. Developing strategies to address these barriers and to align our programs and policies more closely with the goals of the ACPP board as they develop them. And opportunities and openness to exploring funding and match opportunities that exist within those programs that I just mentioned. We also have a very big opportunity around stationary planning, which will begin in earnest next year, and is an opportunity to coordinate with the Met Council to address the inherent tensions between land use, transit-oriented development, and the economic realities of what relocated properties along the corridor can afford to build. Major corridors like West Broadway have land use guidance for mixed use and built form of 2 to 6 stories in height. Transit station areas could allow 2 to 10 stories or more. Relocated businesses moving to vacant land along the corridor will find financing this large scale of development to be very difficult. There is an inherent tension between these two things. If transit-oriented development funding sources and technical assistance do not address these issues, it will be difficult to align anti-displacement and future development goals with the goals of mixed use, mixed income, and commercial space for existing and desired businesses in those buildings. The Met Council and the city must work together to find land use and financing solutions to these challenges. Parking along West Broadway. We've heard significant concerns about parking along this corridor for businesses. Continued development along the corridor is contributing to existing parking problems. Community feedback has been that there needs to be a structured parking solution at Penn and West Broadway to address current parking shortages, as well as additional parking loss from the project. The city has entered into an agreement to lease land to Neon as part of their food incubator project, which will begin construction this fall, for the purpose of additional surface parking at Penn and West Broadway. The Blue Line project will then reconfigure the existing parking lot, creating a surface parking lot at Penn and West Broadway. However, surface parking cannot be a long-term solution at this intersection. Transit-oriented development is needed here. The long-term vision is for structured parking in conjunction with a transit-oriented development at the corner. The county and Met Council leadership will be needed to identify funding, as well as work out ownership and maintenance solutions. In addition, the project has explored opportunities to add additional on-street parking through project design refinement along the corridor. For example, on-street spaces have been maintained on the southeasterly and northwesterly corners of the Penn-West Broadway intersection as design is further refined. Additional on-street parking opportunities may be developed as design work continues. The city and the county are working together on a coordinated strategy to find additional scattered site surface parking opportunities, in addition to those that have been identified at Penn and West Broadway. The city and county plans identify the Penn and West Broadway intersection as an important location for transit-oriented development. So thoughtful parking solutions will be needed that meet the goals of TOD while providing the public parking that's needed. Through participation on the Anti-Displacement Work Group and the Anti-Displacement Community Prosperity Board, direct outreach with community stakeholders, and an analysis of existing programs and policies, city staff have identified specific needs which the project should address as part of the County and Metropolitan Council-led anti-displacement strategy. City staff documented and analyzed our existing programs and policies with the goal of elevating issues or needs that are currently not being met, and identify opportunities that bridge the gap to meet desired outcomes from the Anti-Displacement Work Group recommendations report. In interviews with CPED staff, we asked questions about our programs and policies. We asked what programs are available, what needs are currently being met by our programs, what isn't working, what needs and issues exist that aren't being met. What would you need to better serve your stakeholders and address anti-displacement outcomes? And we identified themes and created a prioritized list of things that could make the most impact that were lower barriers to implement. Themes focused on supporting people, households, and businesses to build resiliency through the various phases of the project. This included communication in advance of acquisitions and construction, support during construction, site control along the corridor, and long-term strategies to ensure that existing businesses and residents benefit from this investment. Based on the needs identified, the following commitments would be needed from Hennepin County, the Met Council, and the Project Office related to anti-displacement strategies. Commitments needed from Hennepin County include supporting the Anti-Displacement Community Prosperity Board, leading on implementation of anti-displacement strategies for the project generally, beyond and in addition to the initiatives of the board. Coordinating with the City of Minneapolis to develop and implement a specific plan for near-term residential and commercial property takings that provides opportunities and solutions for people and businesses to stay in the neighborhood. Develop and resource programs to support housing stability and housing opportunity for existing renters and homeowners. Develop incentives and other strategies to prioritize the creation of affordable rental and ownership housing along the corridor as part of any transit-oriented development. Develop and resource programs to support the success of small businesses throughout the project, including investigating options to support basic operating costs, adaptive business models, space identification, and acquisition and legal support. Collaborate with the City of Minneapolis on redevelopment strategies for publicly owned parcels along the corridor to mitigate displacement and build community wealth. Fund the acquisition of properties that can serve as relocation spaces for displaced residents and businesses. Align existing programs and or develop new programs and funding sources that support anti-displacement needs. And coordinate with local workforce development and training centers to maximize employment of impacted residents in the construction of the project. From the Met Council, the needs that were identified were to develop incentives and other strategies to prioritize the creation of affordable rental and ownership housing along the corridor as part of any transit-oriented development, and to align existing TOD programs and or develop new TOD programs and funding sources that support anti-displacement needs. And from the project, develop a plan and identify resources for the incorporation of public art into the stations that is representative of cultural importance in the area. Develop and implement a communication strategy for property owners and businesses directly impacted by construction to ensure they fully understand the acquisition and relocation process. Develop a specific plan for addressing direct construction impacts. Provide real-time advance notice of construction plans. Fund a city representative to act as a community liaison along the corridor in Minneapolis. And fund the city's costs related to staffing of construction administration oversight and inspections as needed. We would expect a commitment from the county and project to address these needs as part of the city's support for municipal consent. Hennepin County and the Metropolitan Council are committed to increasing corridor participation in the project's construction and operation. They're committed to exceeding the workforce participation goals in place today as set by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which would to incorporate 32% of people of color and 20% of women in the contracting for the project. As identified in the county's anti-displacement coordinated action plan, the Metropolitan Council and Hennepin County are incorporating opportunities to prepare people for construction, operations, and maintenance roles through employment training services operating within the corridor. Additionally, they are considering how targeted recruitment and hiring practices could support hiring corridor residents for these roles. And finally, the municipal consent process is one step in a longer process. It is not the final say from the city. Additional design iterations along the corridor will continue to be worked on. The city will have participation on the CMC, as well as ongoing participation and coordination with the project and the issues resolution team. The city will collaborate and be able to comment on the mitigation work plan that comes out of the environmental impact statement. And the city will also be kicking off our own stationary planning next year. The city will continue to collaborate and support the anti-displacement work along the line through participation on the ACPP board, as well as directly with the county and the project. At this time, myself and Director Hager would be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. McMahon. I will ask council members to get in queue if they have any questions or comments at this time. I will recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. Just first, I want to make sure that, and maybe staff has already mentioned that you all will work with the clerks to get this updated presentation up on LIMS, because the one that I see is only 29 slides, and did not include a lot of the new additions you made. Sure. Okay, great. And then just for clarification, you listed the CTAP, the Cooperative Technical Assistance Program, as also one of the resources as part of like the anti-displacement that could be provided to businesses. I just wanted to get clarification on if that's going to continue beyond 2024, as I know a lot of it was funded through ARPA and also tailored to ARPA.
I'll defer to Director Hansen.
Yes.
All right.
We'll welcome up Director Hansen.
What's that?
CTAP will continue past 2024.
Chair Chowdhury, members of the committee, my name is Eric Hansen, I'm the CPED Director. Councilmember Wansley, could you restate your question? I was in the middle of another thing. I was multitasking in the back of the room.
No problem.
Yes.
So I had asked if CTAP would be continuing beyond the end of 2024, just knowing that a lot of it was funded through ARPA dollars and tailored towards ARPA specific needs. So just wanted to make sure if that was continuing on.
All right. Thank you for restating that question. CTAP, or the Co-op Technical Assistance Program, is a program we offer through the small business team in CPED that offers support to folks that are trying to set up a working co-op. So it's for working instead of housing for those listening along. That is part of our business technical assistance program. We did have some ARPA funding. We are carving out CTAP resources through the greater BTAP sources. So we have technical service providers that can provide from time to time people who are looking to organize a co-op. We do not get a lot of access to that program over the past few years, so it is available. We expect it to be underneath the BTAP umbrella.
Okay, because I think the last time I looked at it, it seemed like even just eligibility was really focused on if you were impacted at that time, or it was very focused around ARPA. So wasn't sure if it expanded beyond those guidelines too for participation.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, yes, the ARPA funding was around people impacted because of the federal funding in the program. But the CTAP program was in place prior to ARPA, and it will continue after ARPA. Again, we're working with our service providers when it comes up underneath the BTAP umbrella. So it's anybody interested in creating a co-op, a business co-op, give us a call, 311, and we will see what we can do to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize President Payne.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury. It's really clear that the city's got a pretty robust set of programs to support anti-displacement, but it's also pretty clear to me that it's going to require us partnering with multiple jurisdictions, and I'm grateful that you outlined some of those specifics. But I was just curious what you think our best leverage points are in terms of those getting those resources, because at the end of the day, this isn't actually that complicated. It's just about money, and it's about money that I think is larger than just the city's budget. And I'm just curious if you have any insights in how we can best advocate to get those resources to help with anti-displacement.
Thank you, Chair Chowdhury, Council President Payne. So I think that's a great question, and kind of perhaps maybe even the question, right, for this body. So we have been in really close communication with the county and Metropolitan Council and the project to talk through all of these items, and I think have had really what I would say is a significant amount of success and progress in coming to alignment and agreement. The county board is poised to act on a resolution which commits to and outlines many of the things that we have talked about with them, things that otherwise might have gone into an MOU. They're really, I think, poised to act on sooner than that through that work, and I believe that was shared with you all early this morning when we got a copy of it. So I think that has occurred, and as we frame up the resolution as it pertains to municipal consent, I think the goal is to capture a lot of these needs, these identified commitments within that, and so that it's something that we have created agreement on with those agencies really prior to that action from the council.
Could you work with my office so that we could maybe draft something up that reflects some of our desires for those commitments, and maybe that's something that we could distribute across some of these partnerships.
We absolutely can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now recognize Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just wanted to comment on how important anti-displacement work is to this. I think, there was early in this project, I almost thought that the route was maybe neither here nor there, and it was going to all be about anti-displacement. And my residents, educated me. They said the route matters too, and so we have been working on the route. But that doesn't change the fact that anti-displacement work, I think, is critically important. And so just want to thank staff and all the work that you all have done in making sure that the city's opinion and voice has been there at the table in terms of executing this work. Happy to see that the county is going to be passing a resolution soon affirming its commitment to anti-displacement work. And then just to add to what Council President Payne said, money is a major factor in our ability to execute this work well, but it actually isn't the only factor, right? Like, strategy really matters, and how we, what conversations happen and along what timeline, I think really, really matter. Because there's a timeline where we're executing this so far out into the future that no amount of money is going to get us there. And so I think that, what I'd love to see us get continued commitment about, I'd love us to make a commitment if that, helps our partners as well, is figuring out along what timeline are we hoping to execute the specific strategies, whether it's from the anti-displacement work group and the recommendations they've already given, or it's from this current group formed by the state and the 10 million and the distribution of their $10 million. Like, what kind of timeline are we working on? What exactly are the strategies? I think that those are the things that I'm sort of nervously aware of, and the clock continues to sort of tick on all of that. So just wanted to say that that's not really a question, but just wanted to lay out that money is critically important for us executing this, but it isn't the only factor. We've got to understand what our timeline and strategies are, because that's going to, I think, determine the success and the cost. I think anti-displacement is going to get significantly more expensive the longer we wait. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. I will recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Ellison, for those really good comments. I feel exactly the same about the anti-displacement work. It's extremely important and critical to this project. But this is getting better. I mean, from last week, it feels better already. And so I hope that we just continue to listen to folks and make it better. Some of the things that were brought up at the public hearing were about businesses during construction. There were several business owners here who have been in business 30, 40 years, and they're extremely concerned about the parking situation and just the construction. They shared that they hear from a lot of their customers that they already have safety concerns in the neighborhood. Whether we believe it's true or not is how people feel, right? And so people are worried about the parking for that reason, and also the opportunities for relocation. Like where could they be relocated to if that is an option? But also just what is going to happen to their business during construction of this project. And so I'm happy to see that some of that is addressed in this presentation, and also that you're going to be reaching out to the faith organization that was here. That they really spoke to their unique situation in that corridor, and I'm happy to hear that you're going to be meeting. But there were a lot of other businesses in the Broadway and Penn area that I hope we're reaching out to. I know I'm personally reaching out, and I know Councilmember Ellison have talked to these people for years now in that corridor, but I really hope staff reaches out to these businesses. Broadway and Penn seem to be, it seemed to be lots of folks from that area that were talking specifically about public safety, parking, displacement during the construction, and how their businesses can survive during construction and make it back to the final project and still thrive. So the anti-displacement is going to be at the top of my list of concerns until we can figure this out. So exciting to hear that the county is going to be passing a resolution on anti-displacement. I think it works well for all of us to show we're working together on this and that we're pulling our resources together. I see Commissioner Green is here. Thank you, Commissioner Green, for joining us today. I think it's going to be important on how we communicate this out to residents as well. Like, I don't want to have to take full responsibility for this as a city council member. So I think it's important for staff from all agencies to make sure that it's communicated that this anti-displacement work is going to be about all agencies involved and not just the city of Minneapolis.
Thank you, Councilmember Vita, for those comments. I will now recognize Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director McMahon. Absolutely agree with Councilmember Vita that there's been a lot of progress in the level of detail just in the last week, so this is really great to see. I'm wondering if there are federal opportunities for federal resources that could be applied for in order to help with increasing our amount of funding for anti-displacement.
Chair Chowdhury, Councilmember Cashman, that's something we definitely can look into, but I might defer to project staff on that one.
Welcome back, Mr. Thompson.
Chair, council member, that's a great question. I think, in the example of the TOD grant that was mentioned that the city's leading, anti-displacement was a key part of our scope of work in there, and I think it's an example of there's probably multiple categories of grants where we would use anti-displacement as one of the reasons to pursue grants. We also know that from the project standpoint, we have been talking with FTA, the administrators, and the top staff about how anti-displacement is part of this project, and we want to set the standard nationally with Blue Line Extension. And so even last week, the FTA administrator talked to our staff about what progress are we making on anti-displacement, what role can FTA play in that. So I think there will be federal opportunities, and we will pursue all of those as we can along with the project and work with the city on those.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Green come up, and I'm sure someone has a little bit more detail from the county side on how you're approaching that too.
And Chair Chowdhury, Councilmember Cashman, I did want to just add to Mr. Thompson's statement about the TOD grant. So the city did receive a $700,000 federal grant to support our small area planning, our station area planning, which we'll be beginning next year. And to his point, in the writing of that grant, a focus on anti-displacement as part of really understanding the land use and how those pieces and connections occur around the station was a theme in that work. Are there others? Okay.
Thanks.
Council members, are there any other questions? I will then just make some comments of my own to here to close us out. Thank you to our city staff for all their hard work on this presentation and all of the work that will take place leading up to municipal consent vote and then beyond when it comes to this project. Thank you to the project office for being here, the park board staff for being here as well, and thank you to Commissioner Green and county staff for being here. And I'll extend a thank you to Commissioner Irene Fernando, who joined us at the Climate and Infrastructure Committee. I'm up here sharing a lot of the same sentiment as my colleagues. Anti-displacement is a key priority for me. We want to make sure that residents that live currently on the north side get to access the benefits of this new transit project and are also able to maintain their livelihoods and their sense of community. That was a theme that I heard from the public hearing is we want to be able to connect with our community, provide the resources that we're providing. That was something that Faith Tabernacle really highlighted. So I was glad to see the information there about supporting Faith Tabernacle and other local businesses that have been serving the area for a long time there. And it's going to take a lot of funding and a lot of coordination if we're going to stave off gentrification. That's just the truth of the matter, and we have seen in history how that has happened, and so we have an opportunity to act proactively. Many council members up here have experienced different projects come through their wards, oftentimes through commercial corridors, and I appreciated the highlight on a request from real proactive engagement towards individuals and businesses that are going to be impacted. Any person that's going to experience hardship before construction or the build out of the project deserves ample notice, deserves ample communication. My request is beyond just a letter, but an in-person opportunity to connect regularly and often, knocks on the door, and then that also takes funding, right? Businesses that need to have signage that show that they're open, or places for their customers to go, whether they're customers within the city or outside of the city, that support that's needed. So I'll just note that for our staff as a request to our partners in thinking about some of the resourcing that we'll need. So everyone is taken care of, and we're really leading with the value of development without displacement. I'll thank the members of this committee for coming to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee and hearing this really important presentation. I'll ask one more time if anyone has any comments or questions. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll ask the clerks to file that report. With that, we've concluded all business to come before the committee today, and without objection, we are adjourned.